So welcome to this week's episode. This is definitely a different one for us. I'm joined here today by Chris from Fathers Unfiltered, and we are basically podcaster to podcaster. We're dad to dad. We've got a lot of experience in both our lives, and we're both quite big. Chris is considerably bigger than I am on social media, and we both are trying to be as loud and helpful, I suppose, as possible to as many other dads as possible in our situations. So yeah, that's who I'm joined with today. So welcome, mate. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Cheers. I appreciate you having me. This is the first time I've done a podcast where I'm not just listening to someone's story. It's definitely something new for me.
Yeah, and likewise, we've obviously spoke beforehand, and then when we decided to do this, we wanted to keep as much of our conversation for this, so it just kind of flows, and we just talk about our experiences and stuff without being rehearsed, I suppose, because we are in a different situation whereby, like myself, just like you do, have people on, have dads on, who can tell their story. But with both of us being the people who usually do the interviewing, it's definitely a different one.
Yeah.
So
No.
it is.
I don't know if you wanted to, I guess, pick up from what we was mentioning a few moments ago.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, you were recording today, recording a podcast just before we came on here, and yeah, I was asking you about that, how that went.
Yeah, I had a chap who travelled from London up to Manchester, a good 4+ hours. We did a 2-hour session, and he's not long headed back down south. He came up with his current partner,
Right.
and it was a good session actually. He very fluent, flowed really well, and it was one of the reasons why I was slightly apprehensive about doing this. Is when a podcast goes really well, I say very little.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm letting them tell their story. So when it's going great, I don't really talk, and I'm sat there like, this was a great podcast. I probably said 100 words.
Yeah. That's interesting. So when do you think this podcast is going to be ready for release?
You're talking, I think it was around, because I've got about 5 or so episodes for release, and I do them every 2 weeks. So you're talking mid-April.
Right. Cool.
So I have quite a backlog. But it was quite a unique, I'd say, episode.
In what way?
I mean, they're all unique in their own way. He had an ex-partner, which everything had now settled down, and they'd actually become quite good friends, you could say, co-parenting really well. But this relationship, they'd been together for 6 years, and he got into this relationship. You're talking weeks after coming out of a plus 10-year marriage.
Yikes.
Incredibly too quick. Like, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And he said, because he'd come out of such a long relationship and he had this big breakdown, quite publicly, where this long relationship had failed.
Right.
When he got into this next one, he was trying to make it work. And he saw red flags. I think it was from week 1 or week 2, where he was getting effectively abusive text messages. And when I say abusive text messages, it was like they were getting to the point of they were like, "Go and kill yourself."
1 week.
Yeah.
1 weekend. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And I said to him, like, why didn't you leave?
Yep.
And it's wild. He stayed for 6 years. He just felt he had to make it work. He wanted to make it work.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. It was a good episode. It was great to listen to. He was really he was quite eloquent with his story, and he managed to stay for 6 years. They broke up, got back together on numerous occasions.
Right.
You're talking many, many times. And it was, I think, the final point of which he decided to finally break it off was they were sort of going to make another try of it. They'd had 2 kids. After having the first kid and having a terrible time.
So one child, terrible time with his ex, got with this new partner, 1 weekend, red flags, then had 2 kids with this partner?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Well, he had one initially, and she said, "Why don't we have another kid?" And he went, "Yeah, well, let's go ahead. Let's just throw another kid in
there." Yeah. Why not?
And they'd gone to a family event. He'd passed the phone. Okay, let's put some music on. Besides, friends are, let's just have a look at the WhatsApp. The first conversation.
Oh no.
The first conversation, and what he told me, which he went into quite graphic detail. Right. It was quite wild, and he reveals it all, and he just left. It was done at that point. But then that's when.
So I just want to make sure I've got you right. So he went through her WhatsApp. Got you.
He gave him her phone to put some music on, and his friends were like, "Just have a look, just check. Why you've got the phone?" And it was, yeah. It was blatant. So he decided to walk out, and it's shocking how many of them are like that.
Yeah, and then obviously I take it he's having a difficult time.
Oh yeah, he's not seen his child for 2 years.
Two children, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yes.
And then how's it getting on with the first relationship, the first child?
Fantastic. He's a lot of his kids are much older now.
Right.
And he has got a new partner who also has about 3 kids.
Okay.
So he's doing quite well. He's just missing these 2 kids out of his life.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly common.
Absolutely is. And going by since when I started doing this, the amount of people that you hear and meet and realise just how common it is, it's awful, isn't it? Because I just never knew it was this common. Even though it happened to me as a child, it's happening to my child. I just never realised how common it is. But this guy sounds like, he's clearly very honest. If he's come on your podcast, drove 4 hours to get there, and said, he saw red flags within a week. He's clearly honest, and it sounds like a very interesting episode to listen to. But,
it's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing the longer that I seem to do it, I'm seeming to see more and more unique instances. The last episode that I recorded was an arranged marriage.
Ah, right, okay.
And I've never had discussions around it before.
No, me neither.
And it'd be an interesting one to listen to. A long story short, he said he got to the end of an 18-year marriage, and it was like they were not even friends. There was never a connection.
Mm-hmm.
There was amazing as parents, but they just never. They were never on that level. It's purely just for having the kids.
And well, that's a whole different topic and conversation, isn't it? Talking about arranged marriages, something which I've not had any discussion with anyone about. But so when you say 18 years, I take it was as clear cut as he stuck around, or they made it work until the children were of age, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, with that, it was what was quite interesting was he talked quite candidly around bringing people over, the fact of you're marrying relatives because they marry cousins, and talking about green cards and the rest of it. So it was a very open discussion. But he'd been burnt extreme. He was quite a wealthy individual, and the court system had. I think he had quite a lot of assets talking in the millions, and they just assigned it immediately over to her.
Oh, did they?
All of it.
Not even 50%, just all of it?
All of it. Yeah. Every single property, all the business, a lot.
Where's he at now?
He's got a new partner, and he's currently going through liquidation.
Right.
It's and I've kind of got to the point where I'm not even shocked at these stories anymore.
Yeah. It's quite sad, I suppose, but understandable. So, when was it you started doing this? What made you start Fathers Unfiltered?
I was about to ask you the same. So mine was, you're talking 2023, around August, and it was when I was going through separation,
right?
Pre the whole divorce part, and it was a terrible time for me. Felt rubbish, and I started getting to talking to other dads on Facebook groups, and just reaching out, and I thought I was having a bad time.
Yeah.
And then I started hearing the stories of every other dad, and it was like, oh no, you lot are having a bad time, like really, really bad time. And I figured, if I felt the way I felt going through my situation, there must be a lot of guys walking around who are living their own little version of hell on a daily basis. Because compared to what I went through, that shocking, every single one of them, like the ones that are willing to speak up. And then it kind of led me on to, these stories kind of need to be told. And once I'd heard them, it was like I couldn't unhear them. Once I got to the point of where my access and arrangement was all good, I couldn't just walk away and ignore it. It's like, oh, this doesn't exist anymore. I've seen what's going on, and I've seen what's happening. And it's like your eyes are open to it all. And then
you can't just turn away.
No, you can't just carry on with the rest of your life as if it doesn't exist, because I know this happens. There's you might be having a pleasant little life, getting on with your kids, but there's tens of thousands of dads there who are having a hellish time.
Yeah.
And I guess my part to try and contribute with the little community that I set up on Discord to provide mental health support and some legal guidance with the solicitor we've got. And then it was to try and give a voice to dads. Like, it seemed too common that women had a support group and they could talk with their friends quite openly, but dads were quite happy to just carry on and not even speak about what took place. And I wanted to give them the opportunity to almost say their piece and put it to rest. And that's where the whole podcast come from. And I kind of do it the way I do it, whereas I did think about starting from the separation point, but I didn't want people just to hear an angry person. I wanted people to understand context around, at one point, these two people really cared about each other. And I wanted other dads who are currently in relationships and people, hear the full story. Hear them getting together, moving houses a few times, the little squabbles, and them spending 5-10 years happily married. Then hear all the bad stuff. That's why when I sit down with a dad, I take them back. Okay, how long were you together? How long have you been separated? Take me back to the day that you met them. Now tell me your whole story. I want to know everything.
Rather than just when it went wrong.
So my episodes can be 2, the longest have been 3 hours, and they tell me anything significant. We want to hear it all, because then you get context around, okay, we understand it went bad here, but now we can see it was actually really good here.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've kind of learned from it, it doesn't matter if you've been with somebody 1 year, 5, or 40 years. it's like that has no bearing on how it's going to be at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a crapshoot on if it's going to go a bit, sideways at the end.
And that's a really interesting way that you put it. So, because that's not something that I've really pushed in conversations that I've had with dads. A lot of the time we will focus on the here and now. But yeah, going back to the start, why did you choose to be with this person? There was surely a time in your life where you would have done anything for them and you would have expected that to be both ways. And then to be in the situation you're in now where, one person could be trying to ruin another. It's hard to believe that it happens that way.
The way like I said, I didn't want it to be, here's another disgruntled, angry dad who's been hard done by, because a lot of the stories, once you get to the breakup, probably sound very similar.
Yeah.
You have access. No, when's the last time you saw him? 2 years. What happened? False allegations. The stories are relatively. It's like,
yeah, right, that's the textbook we talk about. Yeah, but tell us before that.
And then it's like you get the story. One of my favorite episodes. Funny enough, there's no allegations. There's no issues around access apart from the type of job that he has that makes it difficult.
Right.
That's not even the issue. My favorite episode 2, it actually surrounds his mental health struggles from a young age.
Right, okay.
And he talks very candidly about, while he's at work, he'll sit there and he'll go to his van and he'll be like, you know what, he's talking through it openly about how he's struggling on a daily basis, and he'll text his partner or a relative and say, do you love me? And he said, depending upon what reply they give me was whether or not I'm going to end it that night.
Wow.
That hits you.
Wow.
And it's nothing to do with the kids. It's just men talking about the relationships, and that's
interesting. So, what in this guy's particular situation, no issues with contact? Is that right?
No, none. It was purely, he was a plumber, Ryan.
Right.
Really, really nice lad. Just he worked. You couldn't have got it a more pleasant story. He was her first ever relationship.
Right.
He was his second ever relationship. She fell out of love with him, and he had struggled for many years with mental health, and he talks openly about it. And I think that's partly why it's one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah,
because it's nothing to do with it's just one guy telling his story.
Yeah, as a dad.
Yeah,
as well. Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. And going back to when you touched on the end of a relationship and how it is. I mean, it is as if there's a textbook out there to follow, and it's the same, just as you said, you have contact, no, false allegations, manipulation, and just, it's just the same situation that a lot of dads seem to find themselves in. But that's interesting that you've got him on, and he's just talking about struggles in his mental health, and he's a dad, and he chose to come on and do one of your podcasts. So that sounds like a really good listen. So it does.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was an off chance. I travelled down south to do the recording, and we did it in a hotel room. Second ever episode. I think I recorded it 2024 around March.
Right.
I did about 12 months of recording before I launched the episode, or before I launched the podcast. And yeah, probably still to today, it's my favourite one, just because it doesn't actually mention anything to do with contact.
Custody, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So, so that's your favourite one then. What would you say? What would your most shocking episode be that you've done so far? What one took you by surprise?
I know it quite well, and it, It'd be episode 3, and oddly enough, I went to school with him, or so he said. It's with a chap called Simon,
right?
And it actually in the first 5 minutes, he talks about his partner attempting to murder his mum.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
He also had ADHD, which I didn't know how that would affect him, but it seemed to have done. It was if the podcast didn't flow, it was all punchlines. It was very short. Normally they go for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
He ran through 15, 20 years in 45 minutes. It was intense.
Did they have it written down, like bullet points?
No,
it just memorized.
It was from point to point. It was a very, very intense podcast.
Right.
And it was the only podcast episode where I was sat, because we do it all in my living room generally.
Yeah.
And for a brief period, I was actually a little bit scared. And I'm not even joking. I was honestly... Okay, picture this. He'd talked about an emotional period.
Right.
And he was a little bit upset. And then he switches on to talking about getting into 3 altercations at the same time in a road rage incident.
Right, okay.
And he has a proclivity for violence.
Okay.
And he's telling me this while he's staring at me in the eyes. And he's sat right there. And I'm sat there thinking, how are we going to change the subject?
Yeah.
So for a brief period, I was a little unsettled.
So he was talking about his ex attempting to murder his mum.
Yes.
That's going to put a dampener on your relationship, is it not?
Well, funny enough, they're actually best friends now.
Right, okay. Yeah.
It's a difficult... It's not an easy listen, I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only episode. After I'd finished recording, the episode sat with me for a few hours.
Right.
I felt it.
Mm-hmm.
It was unusual. It felt like it was with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is that a good one? Episode 3?
Yes. I honestly wouldn't actually recommend it. It's very intense.
Yeah.
What about yourself? How did you end up starting your podcast?
So, pretty similar timescales to yourself in terms of what actually made me do it. But going back to your point earlier on about starting at the beginning, my beginning was when I was 4 years old. So unfortunately, I went through abuse, neglect, a bad upbringing. When I was a child, I was taken from my dad by my mum. I was then taken all over the country. I stayed in, I can't even keep track of the amount of houses I lived in. We would move in somewhere, then get evicted, not pay any bills, rob whoever was nearby. I know that now, that's what my mum and her partner were doing at the time. But yeah, so quite a rough upbringing as a child. And then I've grown up, I've realised when I became an adult who my mum really was and who my dad really was, I suppose. I then went and found my dad and was able to piece everything together to the point where I cut my mum out of my life, as did my brothers and sisters, and now my dad is the only one in my life. So that was my upbringing. Fast forward 30 years, and unfortunately a very similar situation, scenario is happening to my daughter. and you, I think, mentioned, was it August 23? And I was October 23, so 3rd of October 23 was the last time I had my daughter. She had a complete breakdown when I went to take her back. She locked herself in the car, so I couldn't take her out. And, you know, I've had to explain, Daddy, you know, we aren't together, but this, you know, you're going back, basically, this is going back to you spent a few hours with Daddy. And then that got turned round and used against me, that my daughter suffered trauma within my care, and contact was stopped because she was so distraught and distressed, which she was. But what they didn't know at the time was that I had everything recorded, so video footage, audio. I was there with 5 other adults, other family members, and we all knew kind of what we were dealing with, and we were all able to take steps, I suppose, to ensure that not just my safety but my daughter's safety was paramount. So then we fast forward to, you know, this year, 2025, and only now am I hoping to see my daughter very soon. So I've missed 2 Christmases with her, 2 of her birthdays. Most of her family's on my side, and she's missed out on so much. But given her age, given the fact that I can remember being her age and how I feel and the memories that I have, you know, I wouldn't give up. It was never in me to give up. It's impossible. And I can only hope that I can repair some of the damage that's been done, and move forward and ultimately protect her from people that you would expect to be protecting her just as much as you are, you know. So that's my personal story. But what led to me starting Voice for Dads was everything I've went through when I started talking to other dads when I go to support groups. So I'll use Andy's Man Club for one of them. So I go to Andy's Man Club every week on a Monday night at 7 o'clock, and they are across the country. I think they're pretty much every town now, just about. I don't think you're hard pushed to find one nearby, wherever you are in the country. 7 o'clock, Monday night, Andy's Man Club, and I started going there, and I met other dads, and very quickly, as you say, realised how common it is, how many other dads are suffering, and it's that male attitude, isn't it? It's like, I don't need to speak about it. I'll just, you know, deal with it my own. I'll quietly cry, you know, behind closed doors. But if you go to Andy's Man Club, the chances are you're meeting other men and dads who have already taken that step to get support, or just, you know, look after themselves more than the people that are hiding behind closed doors. So I was able to communicate and speak to people quite easily in Andy's Man Club, that then led to me thinking, just as you mentioned, these dads need a platform. You know, they need a platform to tell their story, to realise that they're not alone. For dads who are sitting, a plumber on his lunch break, sitting scrolling through TikTok, sees videos that I put up, and then go, I thought it was just me that was suffering. You know, I thought it was only me that was going through this. And they realise that that's not the case. So that my drive came from a personal point to do Voice for Dads, and then I wanted it to just kind of start to run itself, whereby other dads talk to other dads out with me, you know, but they've met through Voice for Dads. So when we do our in-person meets, so we do our Zoom calls, then they know that, or that I can talk to such and such because they're going through exactly what I'm going through. You know, we're literally, I've got a court here next week, and so does he. So I want to hear how he gets on. He wants to hear how I get on. So that, and they met through Voice for Dads. So that's my hope for Voice for Dads, that it becomes just a support group for men, for dads to talk to each other and just be there for one another, and put to bed this this old-fashioned way of thinking where men can't speak to one another.
I mean, there was quite a lot mentioned there. One of the first things, I hope you do end up getting a resolution for your own situation.
Yeah.
Hope that does.
Yeah. Thanks for me. It's got to. Can't stop.
I listened to your dad's episode,
and
that is, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that was definitely an episode that I wanted to do. I wish I didn't have to do, and if it wasn't for my dad's situation, I probably wouldn't be doing Voice for Dads. I wouldn't be in this situation I'm in, because going through it as a child is part of the reason why I'm doing Voice for Dads now as an adult. But when you
there was one particular moment in that episode which I remember, and it comes up quite readily, where you just, that particular point, and it's where you stood behind the door and you talk about your mum telling you what to say before the doors opened.
One of my earliest memories, and it's burned into my memory. I can remember the weather. I can remember the car I had. I can remember the colour of the stones outside that particular house. I can remember the height I was in relation to my mum, and being like waist height and looking up, and I have to say this. You hit me, right? Okay, then the door opens. Yeah, I don't want to come with you because you hit me. And I think back now, and what age would I have been actually in that? Five, I think. And one of your earliest memories being so clear. That was.
And I think having it where it's you as the son, talking to the dad as well, it adds so much to it.
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of response you got from that episode, but yeah, it felt very impactful.
Yeah. I suppose validation, would be what I would have hoped from that episode, and anyone listening to it now, validation that everything I say and do and comment on comes from a place of experience as a child as well. I'm not just a dad who's going through what I'm going through, but I've been there as a child. So you might have went to uni, you might have a qualification, you might do this as a profession, but I've got more than enough experience to make comment and do what I'm doing with Voice for Dads, unfortunately. But yeah, I do. So that was an interesting one. So it was, and I think for my dad, it must have felt good. It must have felt good, to be there and think what he's went through, and I know what he's went through. I can feel what he's went through now as an adult. To be there now, thinking that he has his son and his daughter in his life. He also has my brother, who isn't his son, but he is now, I feel like, he's part of the family, and he comes to all our family gatherings, and he doesn't speak to his dad. So yeah, I feel like he's adopted the son that was on the back of his life falling apart. So his life fell apart when my mum got pregnant and ran away with another man. But then the child of that affair is now only talking to my dad, and only it was a weird scenario, that no one could have foreseen. But yeah, that was something else, that episode. There's another two episodes that really hit me, just as you mentioned with the ones you've done. So one of them was a guy called Lotzi, and he had three kids. He moved over here, can't remember how many years ago now, but maybe about 20 years ago or so, from Romania. So Romania, Michael? Yeah, I think it was.
I think I did pick up a little bit of that episode.
Yeah.
Was he the one that's pretty popular online.
Yeah, so he's big on Instagram and stuff. He does a lot of religious content and that, and he looks cool as hell. Such a nice, cool guy. He was just an absolute character. He had us howling in the studio, and although he was here, the reason why he was here was heartbreaking, but everything he's going through, and he still just brought this positive energy. So yeah, he was the guy that moved here, had 3 kids, 3 girls, with us, a woman from Scotland. She then ran away with the kids and a new wife, and he went to the police to try and track the kids down, and the police came back to him and said, "We can tell you your kids are safe, but we can't tell you where they are." And when I heard that, I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? How is that happening?
Yeah.
How is that happening right now in our country? Shambolic."
Yeah, it's got, you can't even serve a court notice at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hire a private investigator to find them.
find them.
Yeah.
Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. So I met up with him since. I actually bumped into him in a restaurant, and I was asking how he was getting on, and he now knows where his kids are. So he's now attempting to make contact with them, but that was it. That was it.
One thing that when I originally set out, I don't know if you was along the same lines, to do the podcast, I had the vision of cataloging as many instances as possible, and that was going to be the great thing where you could just point someone to there, and this is all the instances of wrongdoing, and
right.
You could use it as great lookup. And the more I started recording and actually got it out there to the people, I found that wasn't actually the main use of it. Like that wasn't what people got the most out of it.
Right. Okay.
It was there was like 2 main things that people got from coming on that type of podcast where they're speaking about it. One was the person coming on telling their story,
mm-hmm.
and they were saying how cathartic it was to finally release it and get it off the chest and almost put it to bed. And the second, which I only found out through letters and messages from people,
mm-hmm.
which was people going through situations or just started to go through, and they felt so isolated and so alone. And then they heard the episode and said, I relate so much to that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was them no longer feeling alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that had more value than simply cataloging a load of instances.
Yeah.
That had and stories.
Mm-hmm. And how did you feel when you heard that? That must bring you some comfort. That must. I would be quite happy to hear that. I've had that myself. I have had that, and we have that in our Zoom meetings. With these Zoom meetings we've started, and it's dads that follow Voice for Dads on social media, and then when they hear that we're doing a Zoom meeting, they're on straight away. We're logged on. The first time we logged on, it was like 30 minutes prior to the meeting start time, and I already had a dad sitting waiting. It's just that keen just to talk. So he came on and just spoke and told us the situation he's in and where he was at, and we were in the studio. There's other dads online, and we were able to just have a discussion to know that this guy wasn't alone, and that really makes me happy hearing that.
I mean, the first few episodes, they won't mind me saying, but a few of the guys just in tears.
Yeah, yeah.
And they really did break down. The earlier ones, they got pretty emotional. And it wasn't until when they're walking out the door and they're leaving and they tell you, like, this was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. It felt great. And they're walking out the house almost with a spring in the step, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
I'm glad you got some out of it. You've been sat here for an hour, 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And then the other part wasn't until I actually released it. And it's like, oh, I've had a fan mail. Someone telling me they've just binged the entire, whole podcast
in
a 2-day drive because he's a lorry driver and he's having a terrible instance.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean,
really resonate with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes us back to how common it is. What we were saying earlier on, we're talking about something that is unfortunately so common. And it just shouldn't be the case, but it is. And then from personal experience, how things haven't changed for the better in 30 years, how this is still going on. It should be a national crisis. One of the guys we had on, Stephen, he's ended up becoming quite a big supporter. I'm actually looking on my phone here just now while we're talking for the name of the guy who runs Fathers for Justice, because he keeps putting some good content on social media, and I thought I actually wanted to reach out to him as well.
He's the chap with the glasses and the
that's him.
Really funky suit.
That's him. Yeah, he looks so cool. But he keeps putting videos on, and everyone I read, he resonates with me. So just as people listen to you and I, maybe on a podcast, I'm listening to him, I'm watching his videos, and I'm going, everything he's saying is spot on. Yeah, that's him there. Yeah. Matt, I don't know if that's his name, but yeah, I would really recommend Fathers for Justice, Fathers, and then the number 4 Justice. He is definitely worth a watch. Founder Matt O'Connor, that's his name, Matt O'Connor. So he's definitely someone I would love to have a podcast with. But I get sidetracked there because what was I talking about? Stephen. Yeah, sorry. So Stephen came on and we'd done a podcast together. And going back to what you were saying about you release a podcast and you were getting like mail and truck drivers, messaging saying they're listening to you and stuff like that. Stephen's podcast was like that. There was a lot of traction on the back of it. So Stephen's quite well known in the town he lives in. He is, I think he's late 40s now, I think. And he had a lot of people messaging him that have maybe known him for 20 years but had no idea what he's been going through until the podcast went out. Wow. So we put the podcast out, and he got inundated with people saying, I had no idea you've been going through this, and wanting to offer support. And I think the podcast has really had a big effect on his personal life. But I'm actually going to share, and I know he won't mind, what happened on the back of that, because this is when it highlighted to me the power behind the podcasts and behind social media. So on the back of the podcast that we done, he got contacted by his son that he'd been held from for 10 years. So
that's incredible.
His son's seen the podcast, right? Now, I would like to carry on and keep up the fact that it's a positive ending, but it really isn't. So he got contacted by his son asking to meet. I get contacted by his ex and by his ex's partner asking what vetting would do we check backgrounds and basically criticising us for doing a podcast and giving him a platform. So I just ignored them contacting me. But their actions, they just looked guiltier. They looked more guilty by everything they said to me. And I thought, no, I'm absolutely right to have, gave Stephen a platform and helped him tell his story. So then he was contacted by his son. His son asked to meet with him in Dobbies, the garden centre car park. Actually in the cafe, sorry, but it ended up in the car park. And he was given a day and a time. So it was a Sunday. I think it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And he was there. Stephen went and he took his dad. His dad's elderly, so his dad's in his 70s. So he went there and wasn't sure what to expect. And he was met with not just his son on his own, but his son, his ex's partner, and some big overweight guy trying to look intimidating. All because Stephen was going to meet with his son, right? So I heard on the back of it what happened, and they went into Dobbies. He's went to wait in the queue to go and sit down in the cafe, and they've come up to him and said, we'll just do this outside. So next thing, Stephen's outside, and his 18-year-old son, who had just turned 18 at that time, I think by days, gave him a mouthful of abuse, said he was this horrible person and didn't want anything to do with him. So Stephen, I think a couple of minutes it lasted, and then he's walked away. So he's walked away, got in the car, drove and left. Right. So when I heard this, I thought this resonates with me so much. So much. When I was his son's age, that's when I started going looking for my dad. And I remember my mum got wind that I was looking for my dad. I think a letter came through or something. Then because he had hired a private investigator to find me and my sister. I can't remember that, but my mum got wind that I was looking for him. And I remember turning this act on and being like, I just want to see him so that I can tell him I hate him and he's an idiot. You know, I remember doing that. But I knew then, and I can remember now doing it, because I was thinking I was protecting my mum, and I was only saying what my mum wanted to hear. So
yeah,
when I heard that happened to Stephen with his son, I thought I can put myself in his shoes. You know, this young boy, he has no idea what he's saying and why he's saying what he's saying. He's been manipulated and ultimately abused by his mum. He's been removed from his dad, and he's missed out on 10 years of growing up with his dad. And then it's got to the podcast being released. He had just turned 18, so now he has no one to protect him. But where were social services? Where was any of the government agencies protecting him when he was a child? They failed to protect him, as they failed to protect me. And Stephen then, I don't think he was surprised by what happened, that he knew it could go one or two ways. It could only go one or two ways, and it went obviously the way it did. But when I heard about it, I thought, I know why this boy is saying what he's saying, but he doesn't really mean it. You know, and he's saying it, and I've spoke to Stephen since, and we're going to do a follow-up podcast, but I know that boy will come round. You know, he will, and I hope he sees the videos that I put out. I hope he gets to a point. I think I was 21 when I first met my dad properly. Although I went looking for him, and I actually went to the street where I remembered that I grew up in, and I was looking at a house, and I'm thinking, that house doesn't sit right with me. What, something different? And then I went away, I took my best mate, and I went away, and I went back like a year later to the same street again to try and find him. And I was literally, all I had to do was this with my head, and he was like 3 doors up, and I just missed the house I'd grown up in. I just missed it. So that was my journey to finding my dad. So this boy's only 18, and he's saying what he's saying. He says he wants nothing to do with Stephen. He doesn't know his dad. You know, he doesn't know anything about him. He believes, or only knows what he's been told to believe. But I still hope that he'll come round and at least sit down for an hour with him. Just sit down and let his dad tell him what happened. And then he can maybe grow up and realise that ultimately the boy's been lied to.
18 now. So
yeah,
whether it happens in the next year or next,
I really hope it does. I hope it does. But that to me was the clearest example I've got of how powerful podcasts can be, and social media in general, because that happened on the back of Stephen doing a podcast. So yeah, I'm still hopeful that we get our happy ever after story, but at the moment, in his particular case, we're not. But yeah, I feel for the boy, because he's no idea that he's a victim. He's no idea. But hopefully one day he comes round.
I wanted to ask, do you feel there's still stigma around guys being able to speak up? I know once I get a guy that opposite me, you almost can't shut them up. They just keep talking and talking, and
yeah,
as soon as you press record, they just want to say it all.
Yeah.
But to actually get people to start speaking, do you think there's still resistance to want to do that?
100%. 100% there is. So, and my reasoning for saying that is that the amount of dads that have contacted Voice for Dads, so they go on and there's a submission form on our website, and they contact us, they tell their story, and some of them are pages and pages long. They write their full life in an email and send it to us, but then aren't wanting to come on to Zoom, aren't wanting to do a podcast, or aren't wanting to come to our in-person meets. And it's almost like they'll log on, they'll fill out that form, they'll tell their story, they'll send it away, and then not follow up on it. Maybe they take a bit of closure from sending that email, and then they think they've done their bit, and they don't need to do anything else. Or they're maybe not comfortable doing anything else. Maybe they'll get slagged at work. Maybe they'll get, go to Andy's Man Club, where you have to, you don't have to speak, but you go there, pretty much every week. There could be tears, and a lot of men still haven't come round to the fact that that's the way it should be.
I've got a question. When you get sent these stories, do you read them all?
Yes, read them all.
Okay.
And straight away my reply is, it's the same every time. Here's my phone number. And it's not that I'm an expert and I say this all the time. I've just got lived experience. So when I get the message back, I send my phone number and I say, right, the next step is we speak on the phone. And if I can help you in any way by saying, right, here's a microphone and a camera, tell your story, or here's Shared Parent Scotland, or here's our in-person meets, or here's Andy's Man Club. If I can help just by doing any of that, then that's pretty much all I can do. You need to want to help yourself to start with.
So how many people roughly do you get who want to go ahead with it, but sort of last minute when you're trying to actually arrange the session, drop out, or somebody's ended up in hospital?
I've not had anyone that's booked for a podcast and then come up with that yet, but I was saying in terms of dads that have contacted us, reached out to us and said, I've seen what you're doing, this is my story, I want to tell it, or I want to get help or whatever, I'd say it's more than 30. So as that have taken the step to contact, but then not necessarily followed up. And I'm not saying jump on a podcast. That's not for everyone. Absolutely not.
No.
It can absolutely make things worse in some situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, you that's not what we're saying. But what I am saying is, here's my phone number, and just have a chat. Have a chat. Talk to someone else that knows what you're going through and knows your pain. And then I can put you in touch with other dads that do as well. So yeah, there's a lot. There is a lot. We need to do more podcasts. I mean, that's always going to be the way. I think I always want to have a queue of dads. Why would I not? Because I done what we're doing. We've got a podcast studio, and this is our main aim with Voice for Dads, is to give dads a platform. But the in-person meets and the Zoom meets are also quite a big thing as well for us to carry on, because we just want to be there to support other dads, and jumping on a podcast isn't always the best way.
No, it's definitely not the solution for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it certainly can make things worse in quite a lot of instances.
Yeah. And then that goes back to, well, why would it make things worse? And then you go straight to the court, don't you? I mean, the courts, what happens behind closed doors, and there's no sheriff in the country like social media. Why would you? Why would you like anyone jumping on and talking about, probably in a lot of cases, the failings that happen behind closed doors? And you have to go in there as a parent and sit and not speak a word while other people talk about your own child or children. It is a shambolic system that needs a complete overhaul.
What's one of the biggest sort of challenges that you've found trying to grow the platform, Voice for Dads?
Challenges. I think an interesting one would be, try to think of an example. So I follow a restaurant chain in Ayrshire where I stay, and they're called Tempura. And they've got 5 branches, and their social media is amazing, right? I love it. They are hilarious. Everything they do, they just nail their social media. And every time a video comes on, I'll watch it. You know, they're just on the ball with social media. And the amount of views they get, it could be 100,000 views, right? I'm on Facebook or TikTok, whatever it is. I'll see them. I think they're big on Facebook. So 100,000 views, and it'll be 1,000 likes, right? And then 50 comments. And part of me watches it, and part of me thinks, like, I don't know, I watch it and I think, what they've put on is hilarious. Why are people not reacting? Like, why are people not supporting them more? You know, and maybe I'm being a bit pathetic here, right? But I kind of feel for them sometimes, because their stuff is gold, and like what them as a company, what they do in Ayrshire, and I know Brandon, who owns the company as well. He is a big on men's mental health. I met him at a men's mental health day last November. The Voice for Dads I was speaking at, and he was talking at as well. And he's part of another charity for men's mental health called Harbour, and they cover all sorts of suicide and drug addiction and alcohol and stuff like that. So he's an advocate for them. So when I see them on social media, I think, like, just support them. You know, just support them. Like, either whether it's hitting the like button, making a comment, or sharing their content. Just support them in a small way, but it goes a long way.
You know, one thing that I get quite often, I'll get this is on TikTok. I'll get a message from somebody who was, I can tell if somebody's liked, because you'll see the image come up. So if somebody likes them often, it's like you'll see the same names. And it'll be a message from somebody who has never liked any video, virtually. Yeah. And the message will be, "Hi, I've been watching your content for weeks, really engage with it, love it. I'd like to come on your podcast." Like, you've not liked one single video. Like, but they're just into it. Yeah. But they just choose not to engage in that, or they want to silently watch it and not leave a trace as such. I get that quite often. Yeah,
and me
and
too.
It feels a little bit.
That's what I was getting at with the you know, people being in the background, and they might tell you that your video's been viewed 20,000 times, but how many people are actually doing, you know, supporting you and maybe commenting or liking? You know, it's that's probably quite challenging. A lot of people, just as you say, watch in the background. But that's interesting to hear that someone, so they just message all of a sudden, decide that I'll message, I want to come on. But, well, how have you been supporting us so far?
Yeah. They don't realise, the just a few likes, and it does help. A long way. You know, it does go a long way. I mean, people support in their own way. People consume content in their own way.
I don't know yet how the algorithm works, especially on TikTok. So I definitely prefer TikTok across the 3 platforms we're on. Instagram, I'm rubbish with. Hands up, rubbish with Instagram. Facebook's quite easy. I use that for my business as well. But TikTok, I think, is probably my favourite. So as in terms of me using an app as well, you know, I just like funny videos. I can't be bothered with Facebook drama of actually people that maybe you may know or whatever. But actual, just when you go online, maybe at night or whatever, or your tea break, and you're just looking for a laugh, TikTok's definitely my favourite. But then, it's.
I found TikTok to be the most fun. You can do almost anything there. It's a bit of a crapshoot. It's a bit random almost. Some will pop off and you get a lot of engagement. But Instagram, I find, is the easiest to consistently grow.
Ah, right, okay, right.
It's the type of content I put on Instagram is totally different from the type that I put anywhere else. Right. And it's just, I do totally different. They're like sort of text with some background sound. Just one a day. Just one a day, every day. 3-4 weeks, and it just pushes out to hundreds of thousands. And I find that's the easiest way, consistent posting, and keep it very consistent style of content and short content as well. But yeah, you do have to post slightly different.
So you do that every day on Instagram?
I was doing it for around probably 2 or 3 months, but then I kept having to make the new content each time, which would consume a number of hours.
Yeah.
One issue I've got is I'm the only one that does anything. So if I don't do it, then no one does it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, Instagram's definitely something I could get better with, like 100%. And it's just, I don't know, maybe I feel like an old man on it sometimes. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like some pensioner going, how do you work this again, son? But yeah.
Do you see Voice for Dads expanding beyond your groups and the podcast format?
I would like for it to be a support group where people can come and meet in person. So I would, similar to Andy's Man Club, but then Andy's Man Club is successful because it covers all men, like mental health, regardless of age, situation, anything at all. You could just go and, you know, you don't need to be a dad who's struggling with custody to see your children. So Voice for Dads being a support group is definitely more niche, but it's just where I think the Zoom meetings that we're doing might end up being more successful than the in-person meets, because we do have dads contact us. I mean, I have a dad contacting from as north as Inverness and as south as Liverpool, saying that they basically watch what we're doing and they follow us online and stuff, but they can't come to our in-person meets easily. So yeah, that's where the Zoom meetings might end up being more successful. And then I find myself being on Zoom meetings with other parenting support groups as well. So I know from experience that I take comfort in logging on to Zoom and doing that. So yeah, that would be my plan, that it just in any way supports dads who are struggling, and whether that means that we're just a signpost, you know, to other agencies, to legal advice, or just a group of men who know what it feels like to be in the situation that some dads find themselves in, then I think that's what I would hope and want Voice for Dads to be, just somewhere that men can talk to other men and support one another. So what about you though? How do you view that? How do you view what you're doing with your podcasts? Because you're doing more than that as well though, so obviously you've told me, but let's tell folk that are listening what you're doing out with the podcasts.
I mean, the big plan for the podcast is I want it to generate revenue.
Right.
The idea being is I want the revenue to support the charity. And I haven't mentioned too much on the charity side beyond supporting dads with legal guidance, and we wanted to develop that further. There's actually a board of, we've got 5 people that we're trying to establish a charity with, which we were meeting quite regularly about trying to grow it. So this charity the vision that we had, basically, we wanted to change or create a social housing for dads that have gone through separation.
Right, okay.
We wanted to create emergency housing for dads up and down the country. So this is when dads separate, we wanted somewhere for dads to be able to go. Mm-hmm. No charge, because we understand there's the issue of when a dad is asked to leave the house, he has to support the existing house, he has to pay child maintenance, and then he has to support a new house. Yeah. Most people can't do that. So we wanted to create an emergency housing where dads can move into near the families, and we're not going to charge for it. And we wanted them up and down the country. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, we wanted to contact councils all over the country, and we wanted to get them to reallocate their derelict houses to our charity, and we would then renovate, repurpose them, and put them back into the housing market. Whereas rent in an area might be £800-900. We'd charge, say, £200, which would be the cost for the heating system, certificates, and electric, and a bit of the legal fees, because charities cost money and houses need maintenance. So the idea being is dads near the kids wouldn't be required to try and get the money to work longer in order to get the maintenance to pay. They'd be less focused on getting the money, and it'd be more focused on getting the dad spending more time with kids and getting the dad as close to the kids as possible. It was to reduce the financial burden of going through the separation and allow it to make it easier moving on and going forward. And we wanted to allow that, the long-term housing, until the kids turn 18, and then the burden of having to pay for the child maintenance would reduce, so then the dad can then move on and move into regular housing. This is what we want. And it also then reduces the burden on the existing housing market, because you've got 30,000+ houses which are being brought back into the market, which would be leased or owned by the charity. But that's
your long-term goal.
That's our long-term vision. And the funds from the podcast, so when that's going to go towards being able to build that. And the great thing about, because it'd all be established within a charity, in 50, 100 years' time, the charity moves hands. It's not like somebody can just sell it up. Like, all the houses are going to be kept within the charity. So ideally, over years, it's going to grow and grow. And it could actually be the social housing that, there currently isn't one. As such. Well, they all keep getting sold off anyway.
Well, that sounds awesome. So it does. That sounds awesome. And I hope that succeeds. I hope you do. I hope you do well. That sounds incredible. So it does. So yeah.
Me too.
Absolutely. We've got a wee list of questions that both of us had spoke about before we come on. And one thing I just wanted to ask you was, so I mentioned Matt O'Connor that runs Fathers for Justice. Who would be your dream guest to get on and do a podcast with?
Mine, I actually reached out to a couple people, celebrities as well. One, because he was quite in the news and was going through a breakup. Tommy Fury?
Yeah.
Yep. I reached out to his team to see if he'd come on. Yeah, didn't.
No.
Didn't get a response.
Didn't get a response at all?
I believe they've got back together. No.
I thought they've not get back together, have they?
I saw some that they might have. Someone showed me a picture. So they may not have.
Right.
Don't know. But yeah, I reached out to him.
I only know what you're talking about because of TikTok, I suppose. Him and Molly May, isn't it? And it was...
Yes.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. But he would be pretty cool, so he would be cool.
He would. And the other one who I reached out to recently was... is it Tyrone? From Coronation Street?
Yeah. Yep. I know who you are.
Yeah, I reached out to him. I believe he's gone through...
Was he going through similar?
He's had a bit of a breakup a while, and I think he's had another one recently. But yeah, they were two that I was mainly looking for people around Manchester.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Manchester, well-known people.
Yeah, that sounds cool. There's a celebrity in Scotland. I don't know if you know who he is, but Grado is a wrestler, comedian, well known up here, on TV and stuff. So I've actually been talking to him, and I hope to get him on to do a podcast soon. Not that he's going through any of the situations that a lot of our dads are, but just to help us in spreading the word, and what it is that we're doing here, given his following. So yeah, it'd be quite cool to get him on. Another thing you asked here is the edit. So you do, like you mentioned earlier on about like Instagram and stuff, and you don't have a team working for you, so it takes up a lot of time. So how do you manage that?
Yes.
How do you manage the time versus like recording and being a dad and working and everything? How do you manage your time?
It's difficult. I kind of live with my calendar a lot, and especially over the last month or so, I've had a lot of requests to come on, and some people will, follow up and, oh, when are we going to do that episode? I'm like, look, at best I can record 5 a month. That I don't have the time. So to give you an idea, to do one episode probably take 6 or 7 hours from start to finish. That's how long I've worked out, from the actual arranging the episode, the time spent messaging, to someone turning up, prepping the equipment, to sitting down and recording. That could easily be 2 to 3 hours. So then afterwards, I have to upload it to 2 different locations, which can easily take me an hour, because talking multiple gigabytes, not the best internet. And then you're having to re-download, edit the episode, back them up, and then publish them. Then it is like 6 or 7 hours. But people don't see that. Think, oh, it's just an hour episode. And
yeah, no matter what that goes into
doing a podcast on your own. You think it's fun? if you don't enjoy doing the podcast, don't start a podcast. I'll tell you. Yeah. It's a time sink, like an immense time sink.
And you do it all yourself, so you do all your editing and everything yourself?
Everything. I did reach out to an editor, and he was going to charge $2,000 the first 10 episodes.
Right.
And I was like, great, but what about the next 10?
Yeah.
I was like, so now I use a bit of AI, and it sort of does it for me. So, but yeah, the biggest thing is it's time. So now I kind of work on, I look to have at least 3 ready and completed in the backlog. And by the time those 3 run out, I want at least 3 raw cuts. And then I want to quickly edit them and then get 3 more raw cuts. So those 3 episodes will last me about 6 weeks. So I've got a nice little buffer. 2 weeks left, I could easily get 1 or 2 episodes in. You're not constantly thinking, I need an episode. Yeah. But it's hard. I don't know how you manage it where you've got an added layer of complexity because you add video, especially when you've got multiple cameras. It's one reason why I've not gone down that route.
Yeah.
Because it takes long enough.
No, it absolutely does. And I'm lucky in here because, as you say, the extra layer where we add visual as well. I've got Michael. So I've got a Voice for Dad's producer who produces our podcasts. But yeah, I mean, hats off to you for everything you do, and to be doing it all yourself as well. And then you've got your social media to take into account. You've got your videos that you upload every day to Instagram, and before you know it, it could be a full-time job.
Yeah, doing the Instagram when I used to spend an hour, and I could batch create probably 20 pieces of content, and that'd sort me, nearly a month. You just rip them all off on your phone, schedule them, and you'd literally forget about the account. You'd copy and paste, create all the content, schedule them, gone. Right, I don't even look at that account anymore, which was great. You just have a link on your profile and it sends people out. TikTok, I just find that's fun, and I get the most traffic. I mainly do TikTok really to direct traffic to where I want to get it to go. If it wasn't that need, I probably wouldn't even do TikTok.
I definitely need to learn from you when it comes to Instagram. So definitely. So yeah, I'm just flicking through all the points we had down, and I think we've pretty much covered everything just now. I know you had invited me on to your podcast, and it's something I definitely look forward to doing when I'm in a position where I can speak. At the moment, I'm not, so I can't say too much about myself. But I do want to come on just as you've had dads on, tell their story. I would love to come on and do that with you and tell my story.
Yeah, I think from my own position, especially currently, now and for the good while, I won't be discussing too much of my own situation, and I think to keep everything amicable as well. Everything seems to have leveled out relatively nicely.
Well, that's good. That's good. So what's your plan then for the next for your podcast then for the next 12 months? What's your plan?
Mine is, what I find is it's slow. You need to constantly feed new people in, which is not easy. I'm finding I've got a nice little core of audience. I'm watching every time I release an episode. You're watching by the end of the week how many numbers you've hit by the end of the week, and then you can estimate whereabouts you are on the download percentages.
Right.
So it's constantly trying to find new people while retaining existing listeners, making sure that I've always got an episode there, and I'm not just putting out an episode. Just that it's not crap. I'm trying to maintain some level of quality, and one thing that I've sort of, I don't know if it's struggled with. You alluded to it earlier, which is sort of vetting people, and people have brought it up to me in the past. How do you know if somebody's not coming on just to, air grievances and make up lies? And it's I don't know. It's a hard one. I had the first time, and I don't want to mention it too much, but it got mentioned that somebody was going to be on my podcast, and somebody did contact me and tell me not to have them on my podcast.
Interesting. That's happened to me as well.
Yeah.
So it has happened to me. That very thing happened to me actually multiple times, and it's on all occasions it's been an ex. So it's been a female that's contacted me who is basically terrified, and they've got wind that their partner's maybe going to come on and do a podcast. So I'll speak from my experience and my decision, and you can tell me if you agree or you've done similar. But that didn't put me off straight away. If anything, it almost made me want them on more. Because I think is this person maybe just scared they're going to be outed for their actions, for their behaviour. So it didn't put me off having anyone on. I've had a couple contacting me anticipating that they would have an ex come on and do a podcast, and I never heard from the ex. So that's also interesting, because I'm not going to go hunting for someone. If they contact us.
It's quite a unique one. My ex might contact you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, all right, okay. I'm waiting on them contacting. I'm like, yeah, okay, still nothing. But yeah, so no, I've definitely had that as well. But for me, it doesn't put me off having them on. I also had it was actually down your neck of the woods. I think they're from Manchester, and it was a dad who took to social media to basically record everything that was happening with his son. He was fighting to see his son, and he was recording everything and posted it. And he was getting tens of thousands of views, and I reposted it on the Voice for Dad's account, and then I get contacted by his ex and asked to remove it. So the angle she took was that I had shared it, and it had her child in the video. But so then I thought that's a fair point. So then I went back to the dad, and he authorised us to leave it on the page. So I just went back, politely said, look, we've had consent from the dad, and we've got permission to share his video. I then got bombarded with screenshots, text messages, video footage as well that she'd taken, and it was like just a barrage of texts, and I couldn't keep up. Like, I could not keep up, right? And I thought, I'm not interested in any of this. Like, this is, whoa, this is too much, right? part of me thought, now I can see where the guy's coming from. You know, the guy's got a point, because you are clearly unhinged. I mean, it was chaos to contact us, and all we did was reshare his video. So yeah, that was interesting. So it was, and then I've had a few as well that you'll reshare or comment on, and then you get threatened with court action and all the rest of it. Yeah, I've had my fair share of that, to be honest. So I have. So yeah.
I mean, I've not had any issues off the back of the podcast itself. I probably need to reach a few more people before I get the joys of that. What I'm finding is the more I talk openly about, I believe, safeguarding issues aside, that's a given. I believe mums and dads should have 50-50 equal access as 100%. A given. Like I said, safeguarding issues that off the table. That's you don't even need to say that.
It should be the starting point. It should be the default position.
It should. The more I talk about that on the likes of TikTok, I've seemed to have found an audience of anti-men advocates, or that seem to barrage my profile and love to tag me in anything and everything. And it's happening more and more.
And all you're saying is you want kids should have 50-50 access to both parents. Coming from a child's perspective, you know, it's who's looking out for the kids. The kids have rights, and the rights should be equal access to both parents. So you're putting that out there and getting what messages?
Oh yeah, I'm getting. I get told about instances where one dad did something terrible, you know, ended the life of the child, and I think there was a couple instances, but because of those couple instances, it's almost as if no dad should have 50-50.
Yeah,
like 2 instances. I'm sure I could find 2 instances where a mum has done something similar.
Yeah, and it's absolutely. Yeah,
and it's wild. Rather than they're working from the extremes, rather than all right, let's start in the middle. You know, let's go with what the norm is.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, just on touching on what you said there, that just reminded me about the video you posted a few weeks ago of AI. Remember you asked AI?
Yes. I was wondering which video you was going to talk about then.
Spot on. So it was. I had goosebumps listening to it. I thought that it just fixed everything. And how long was it? Was it 2 minutes or something? No, it was more than that. It was 5 minutes or something.
It was 4 minutes.
Okay. And then you posted it, and I thought, that's it fixed. If we just...
Yeah, it was... I only asked it regarding dads that are being alienated, and regarding dads that don't have 50-50 contact, but both parents have parental responsibility. I asked AI, how would it solve the issue? And it didn't just solve it. It wrapped up in a nice little bow.
It was I've got goosebumps like the video just now, actually. It was spot on, to the point where I thought maybe I was like, somebody's typed this in, you know, how is this so accurate? Like, it just nailed it. And I thought that was it.
It was incredible. That's been shared quite a lot, and I've had some significant people reshare it and contact me in the background off that and saying they're going to use that, and because it was just such an ideal case. It was like we need to do.
It was like
awareness.
If you walk into Westminster and just play it and say, do that. That's on your system. Anyone disagree? You know, there we go. Because, and this is where I do find myself like I'm hitting my head against the wall sometimes. So dads will talk about dads, right? Mums will talk about mums. We'll talk about helping other dads, and it's always about adults talking about other adults, right? But who is sticking up for the kids? Who is looking at it from a child's point of view and thinking these children all have rights, and their rights should be to have 50-50 access to both of their parents as the starting point. And it's just as you say, the safeguarding issues aside, so that's the only time when a child shouldn't have access to a parent, is if they're in danger. But straight away, again, we'll go to the dad, but that could just as easily be the mum. So that's the only time where it should be, right, maybe we need to look at this here. The default position should be 50-50. And it should be a child's right, because I never had that when I was a child. You know, where were my rights when I was a child? Where was the system and the government protecting me to make sure that my dad was in my life just as equally as my mum? They weren't. That's the answer. They weren't. The system failed to protect me. I've then had this pretty crap upbringing. Then I've had to go as an adult and repair it. And now still I'm trying to undo the damage that my mum was allowed to do to me when I was a child. And it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's still the same system. And that is why it needs to be changed. Because you need to look at it from a child's perspective. What's best for the child. The children have rights, and the default should be 50-50, unless the child's at risk. That's the only time where we should be questioning.
Even though it's common sense, you already know it's never going to change, or it's very unlikely because it's so well established. And to change it, it's like you could. Most of the court system, it's not really required then, because it's like the way it even said about child maintenance service.
Yep.
Well, if it's default 50-50,
there is no child maintenance.
They're almost irrelevant.
Yep.
It's,
And I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
System.
I'm not, right, and I laugh at most people that are, to be honest. But that to me does make you think: is it going to change because the people who have the power to change it are benefiting from it because it's paying their wages?
I mean, it's the only way, like it said, you're going to change it is you need to change it in the laws. But then to get that changed, it's going to be, let's do a review, and they just get knocked back and knocked back.
That's where fame comes in, right? That's where fame comes in, because with fame comes power. So the louder you are, the more famous you are, the louder you can be. You know, then ultimately that brings change, right? Let's take Donald Trump for example. Whether you hate him or you love him, I have a feeling someone like him would make the change required. I think you could play to him that AI video that you've done, and he would go, "Yeah, that's right. Executive order signed, done."
Yeah.
You know, I think that's. But we don't have that in this country. You know, you're not going to play that to Keir Starmer, are you? Like, you know,
God.
It's not going to happen. I don't even know who the First Minister of Scotland is, or that insignificant. But we just don't have that luxury, I suppose, in this country. But it needs to.
I think this is where, with the platforms and us being on social media, and as the presence grows, people continuously keep talking about it. More people talk about it, and the message gets wider and wider reach. It almost becomes inevitable that it has to get raised at some point, because then the message becomes so big that it almost becomes it becomes a voting point if it becomes that big.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true.
And then if they want to win a few 100,000 people here, well, let's consider this because we can win so many votes. That's potentially, but then you need to get the message bigger and bigger in front of more people, and it's going to take time.
It's like Fathers for Justice. You know, you see themselves getting chained to the gates at Buckingham Palace or whatever, and all the stunts that they've done. I remember them doing. I haven't seen it for a while, but they've done, certainly when I was younger, I remember seeing it, and that was all just about getting a voice, wasn't it? They were just trying to bang the drum as loud as they could, and I suppose we're trying to do the same, except on social media and podcast form.
Yeah, but I think you need to say it. I mean, they might do a stunt, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've not seen them for a few years," and then you carry on your day and forget about them.
Yeah,
I think by being there on social media and having a following that consistently follow you for months and years even, and you know people in different circles who are also growing over years, and then you start to network together, use your circles effectively, and you can really do something with that.
Yeah, I would agree, and I hope that is the case. Some of this, I've done a couple of stunts, not to the extent of chaining myself to Buckingham Palace gates, but I did. There's a famous statue in Glasgow, and it's the Duke of Wellington, and it's famous for always having a cone in its head. Don't know if you've heard about it or seen it, but it's basically in the city centre of Glasgow. For decades and decades, drunk people were putting a cone on this guy's head. He's sitting on a horse, and it became that common that the council would go up and remove it, and then someone would go and put it back on, and it just became a kind of running joke to the point where it now is required by the council to make sure there's a cone on its head. Right? This is just typical Scottish banter, sort of, right? But so that now there is a cone that's permanently on his head. So in November of last year, I done a video, we put it out, and we had a yellow Voice for Dads cone, and we had the Voice for Dads van pull up next to it, and I got a set of ladders out, and I climbed up, and this is broad daylight, middle of the afternoon, busy city centre, and we had drones up and guys filming and stuff, and I went and replaced the cone with a Voice for Dads yellow cone, and I stuck a flag in the statue's arm as well, the Voice for Dads flag. And again, this was all just about banging the drum. And that cone was there for a month. So it was there for a full month in November into December. So seen by God knows how many hundreds of thousands of people past that in that time. And that was all just about banging the drum. And the council came up after a month to replace it. And the building opposite had scaffolders working on it. And the scaffolders clocked that the council were there to change the cone over and saved the cone. So they took the cone from the council workers, messaged Voice for Dads and said, we've got your cone and we're keeping it safe.
Oh,
so we get the cone back. So we did. So we've got that yellow cone now, and we've got plans to, kind of do a kind of put it back. Or do different landmarks and stuff. So you can go to Edinburgh Castle or Stirling or, somewhere around the country and plant it and then take pictures. And again, all with the same intention of just banging the drum. That's it. Just be as loud as possible, because the more people that do it, the more someone's going to pick up on what we're saying. The right person is going to think, I need to help these folk here, I need to help these dads, and ultimately we can maybe change the law. That's the plan.
There's some of that I want to mention because there's a bit. Are you aware of somebody called Deadbeat Deadbod?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an event on in London.
Right.
He's doing a protest.
Right, okay.
April 25th. I hope I've got that right. Look it up, anyone who's listening. But he's protesting on behalf of dads and the rights of dads in the court system. So he's hoping to get quite a few down there. I mean, it's actions like that. Hopefully we can get a lot of people there. That sounds
good. And it sounds right up my street. I'll be looking that day up. And yeah, if I can go to that.
That's a long way for you to drive.
I don't care. It'd be good. It sounds like something I'd love to be part of. 100%. So 25th of April, you think?
I believe it's 25th. I'd double check on his TikTok page, but I know it's April, pretty much around there. But yeah, he's doing a bit of a protest.
That sounds cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. See if we can go to that. Another thing we did was get a jet ski and went up the Clyde. So that's the main river that runs through Glasgow, and I had the Voice for Dads flag over my shoulder, and we're bombing up and down outside the BBC and all the famous landmarks and stuff. Again with drones following us, and made a video out of it. Just again with the intention of banging the drum and just being as loud as possible. So I hope well that will continue, because I'll make sure it continues. But yeah, I hope we can come up with some cool creative ideas, because being as loud as possible. Can't ignore us forever.
No, just need to get the message out there as much as possible in front of as many people and the audience.
And it's maybe the best way to put this without getting slaughtered. I feel like if I meet a professional, right, if I met someone that's to do with the government, an MP or whatever, you can't just say, "Oh, you're." I'm a dad, right? You can't just say you're a dad that's not seen his child, and you're going through this just now. You know, poor you. I feel like I've got extra credibility because I can say the system failed to protect me as a child, and I have such clear memories of it. You know, and I know how damaging it is. So that alone means that you will listen to what I've got to say, and not just me, but everyone else that's part of our group, and just like the dads that do your podcast as well. You have to listen to all of us because we're all coming from the same place. And ultimately, for 30,000 dads that are going through this, say, how many children is there? Over 100,000, hundreds of thousands, who knows? You know, because it's never just one dad, one child. You know, there could be several children involved. So there's far more children suffering than there is dads, and that's an upsetting truth. So it is.
I'm waiting for the day that I get a politician's phone number in my phone. I'm noticing, and I'd be interested to hear your point on this. Since starting the podcast and having I'm getting more people who I wouldn't necessarily be in contact with. Like, I'd say significant people, I now seem to have their number in my phone that I wouldn't normally be able to contact. And I'm getting people reaching out to me saying, here's my number.
Yeah.
And quite a few of them have access to politicians, but yet I've not been given a politician's number directly just yet. Are you finding anything?
Well, yeah. So one of the guys in our group had a meeting with a local Labour MP, and he raised everything that we just spoke about. He raised all of that, then raised Voice for Dads and what we're trying to do. I myself have got a meeting with my local MP. It's in March. The dates, I can't remember the date right now. Well, it's the middle of March. So I've got a 45-minute meeting with my local MP with the intention of just laying out everything we're doing. So everything we're doing at Voice for Dads, and basically saying, this is what I'm doing, what can you do? And if we all do that with our local MPs, you know, then just what I said a minute ago, they can't ignore us forever. You know, they've got to listen.
Yeah.
So I think every dad that's in this, situation should be approaching their MP. They should be approaching a lot of people. They should be approaching men's mental health groups. They should be approaching the gym. You know, they should be doing all sorts of things to look after themselves, because you and I both know that it's hard to explain just how bad a place you can end up in when you go through this. You know, it's like some of the dads have said to me, it's like you're grieving your child, but they're still living. You know, and it's hard to explain that to people unless you've went through it. How does that feel to grieve for a child who isn't dead?
Yeah,
it's a bad place to end up in.
I know what it's felt like to worry about that situation, and it's a worry that doesn't go away. But to have it where the child isn't there, it's not a pain that I've had, and I don't wish it upon anyone.
I was talking to a dad who, when he last had his child, I think it's about 9 years now since he's had his child, they used to go to a restaurant, and he still goes to that restaurant and it's almost like, I think the way he described it was like the scene of a tragedy. Like he goes and looks at the table they used to sit at, and if his child's still living, you know. And when he said that, I thought it's hard to describe in words how low you can actually be when you find yourself in this situation. What I can also say is, from my own experience, is that I've got pictures of my daughter all over my house, and I, at the moment, can barely look at the pictures of her because I would just break down, you know. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, every dad that's in this situation, if they went to their MP and raised awareness, then that would help. That would help towards making change sooner. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier on. It's as simple as 50-50 is the default starting position.
I think probably one question, I don't know how close we went towards, and one question, final. What's one message you'd want every dad listening to your podcast to take away?
You're not alone. I say that quite often, whether it's on social media posts, in person, or on podcasts. You're not alone. So when you sit there and you might be sitting in an empty house, you might not know how your child's been that day. You might not even know where your children are. You know, I know dads that are like that. They don't know where they are in the country, let alone being able to speak to them and check they're okay. You know, to have a good day at school. They maybe feeling unwell. They're missing you just as much as you're missing them. You know, their birthday. You missed their birthday. Were they thinking about you on their birthday? You know, all these questions that dads will find go over and over in their head to the point where they feel like they're going insane. Crying themselves to sleep. You know, like seeing a hairbrush or a bag or a teddy or a toy or something, and it just sets off, you know, these emotions. I think all I would want to say to each and every one is, you're not alone, because there's other dads out there that know how that feels. And I think that should bring comfort. I know it brought me comfort, because it's just that it's kind of natural human instinct, isn't it? If you know other people are going through what you're going through, then you can relate. They can relate better. You can, you know, it does bring a bit of comfort knowing you're not the only one. So yeah, I think that would be it. You're not alone.
Really good.
What about you? What do you think? I'll reverse that question.
You know what? I'd like to come up with something else, but you've said it so perfectly.
It is, so isn't it? That's what it all comes back to. Everything that we do, every video we make, every person we meet, every podcast we do, it all just goes back to just dads realising that there's other men out there that are going through it. And ultimately, you and I doing a podcast like this and starting our own, and there's other dads out there that are banging the drum just as loud, if not louder, as we're the ones that are maybe thinking bigger and thinking, oh, this needs to stop. This needs to stop. Change has to come. You know, and it shouldn't be happening. It just shouldn't be happening. And we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Yet, when I look at our family courts, it would appear that we aren't a first world country for a start. You know, we're so out of touch with reality. So we're, and for me, it's easy fixed. It really is easy fixed. And I'll go back to the AI video you done again, because that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of slight sidetrack. I think I saw something on Trump earlier on, and I couldn't imagine this happening in the UK.
Right.
But he's now brought in a law where divorce now in America is no longer 50-50 assets.
Right, okay.
So I don't know if you've seen
No, I
about
haven't, no.
this, but it basically means when a man and woman divorce in
Mhm.
America, the woman no longer gets half of the man's assets.
Right, okay.
It's now you couldn't imagine a rule like that even being suggested, but they've brought that in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to what you said before, is you kind of need that significant person to help push
Yeah.
this change through.
And I think if we went as blatant as saying we need a Donald Trump, we'd just get absolutely annihilated. So but we do need someone. We need someone. But I mean, if we're going to touch on our leaders, then we could be here for days, going by the incompetence that we have in this country. But yeah, I am interested in changing the law to protect children. That's what it comes back to. Children have rights, and those rights need to be protected. And from personal experience, 30 years ago to present day, they aren't being protected, and that has to change.
Definitely.
So, but let's hope what we're doing helps. You know, even if it's just a small way, let's hope it helps.
Yeah, whether it eases the pain of a few dads or it raises a little more awareness.
Yep.
Hopefully it does something.
Absolutely. And I look forward to the day when I can come on. I look forward to the day we can meet in person. And yeah, it'd be good to do another podcast. I'll certainly tell my story when I'm in a position to. And yeah, I wish you all the best in everything that you do. I think your vision is awesome. It sounds so cool, you know, so out of the box, and I think it needs to be, you know, I just hats off to you. That's just absolutely brilliant. I think everything that you're doing.
Bigger, you aim for as high and as big as possible, and if you get anywhere near it, you've at least done something.
That's pretty cool.
Aim for the biggest thing that I could possibly do, and it is kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
Only need tens and tens of millions of pounds.
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done. Everything starts off as an idea. So yeah, sounds pretty cool. And I can't wait to see what happens. I'll definitely be following up, mate. So yeah, if you're all cool with that, then I think we could wrap up this episode.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been nice talking to you and just discussing both the podcast and yeah, what we've taken from it, what we enjoy, and it's been interesting for me to have my first podcast.
Absolutely. And I never actually, that was something before we go I meant to ask. So details on your podcast. Your podcast is on Spotify.
It is. It's just Spotify. I only do it there. People tell me that I should move it to other platforms. I've tried it, but I kind of like the way Spotify support it because they seem to be pushing it out when I'm just on their platform. They seem to be pushing it out to more and more people. Yeah, like a lot more.
That's interesting. I know that our podcast is on Podbean, so we use Podbean to promote ours. So we're on Apple Music, Spotify, a few other ones I don't know. But because we are visual as well, so because we've got the video, then we put it on YouTube. So we've got the YouTube channel, and then I started off when we've done the first couple. I put the full podcast on like Facebook and TikTok, but I had to clip it to like 10-minute videos, and then I stopped doing that after I think it was the fourth podcast because I was having all sorts of problems like just trying to upload it, and then it's like part 1 of 8, 10-minute videos. I thought this is getting a bit messy here, so if you want to watch the video, the only place I think we can do that is YouTube, and the audio is on the other platforms. But yeah, that's
you can actually do it on Spotify.
They're doing
as
video,
well,
are they? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, they actually pay quite well as well.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Are we on Spotify?
The threshold for
audio, just audio at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, the threshold for earning money, I believe, and what you'd get for video is it's better.
Okay.
But it's worthwhile having your video if you've got them on Spotify.
That sounds cool. We've also, I look forward to doing more in the studio podcasts. Obviously, we're doing this one in the format we are through Zoom, but because we've upgraded all our cameras in here as well. So when I was watching the podcast back that we started, it didn't look that good. So yeah, so we've upgraded our cameras and just small changes, but I'm sure that you'll do as well when you're doing your audio. As you do more, you learn more. You find what works, what doesn't work. So yeah, it's definitely every podcast is a learning experience, as it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one little side thing, you probably won't notice if you listen to it, but on episode 1, the first one that I've recorded, my headphones were actually muted for the entire episode.
Right, okay. Was that by accident, obviously?
Yep, by accident. I didn't realise until afterwards that I had it set incorrectly, and I was like, why is it so quiet? And I'm effectively just talking to the chap with Amos.
I was going to say, so you're in the room with them and you're sitting swearing with something.
I'm like, why is it? He's like, do you want to turn it up? I was like, yeah, just turn it up a little bit. They were muted.
But that's like even doing this podcast today. This is a new format for us. And then we were doing the sound checks before, and I've had to turn myself off in my ear. Actually, there's quite a good. I'm definitely going off the sidetrack here, but there's quite a good bit from Joe Rogan where he's talking to. Oh, I can't remember his name now. Him with the long hair, the mullet. It's a comedian. I can't remember. He's talking to him, but anyway, he doesn't want to put headphones on. So he's in the studio and he's like, I don't want to wear headphones. And Joe goes, no, you need to wear them, because when you hear yourself in your ear at full bung and then you hear me, you'll realise very, very quickly that you don't speak over each other. And I thought, it's actually it's a really good way of putting it, the way he done it.
It's true.
So yeah, we're in the studio, I'll have myself in my ear just as loud as I have the guest, and it does help. But it just goes back to like every podcast you learn, don't you? So.
It is. But no, it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been awesome, mate. Thank you so much for it. It's really cool.
Thanks for having me on.
And yeah, please, if you are listening or watching this through Voice for Dads, please go to Fathers Unfiltered, give them a follow, give them a like, and please support everything that Chris is doing. And yeah, thank you so much.
Nice one. I appreciate it. And it's, really enjoyed it.
Cheers,
wish you all the best.
Right, speak to you soon. Cheers, man.
See you later.